Good evening, everyone. Before we start the meeting, in accordance with board policy, I will need to make a statement that we do have two speakers tonight that will be speaking in the public comment section. Well, Ms. Jane York will be speaking to board agenda item number 16, and a Mr. Easton Moore, who will be speaking to item number 15. Call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Here.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, item number 2, the statement by the board vice president.
As we begin this meeting, let us pause for a 60-second moment of silence to reflect, meditate, pray, or engage in other silent activity.
All right, thank you. Next item, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the Deputy Clerk, Mr. Steve Majors.
Stand. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item, adoption of the agenda. Any discussion?
So move.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell? Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, oath of office to swear in the new board member, Mr. John Cockrell. Right up here in front. Be nice to him, Mr. Denton. Got a big crowd tonight.
Raise your right hand after me and repeat. I state your name, do solemnly swear
I, John Cockrell, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States of America
I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America
and the Constitution and laws of the State of Oklahoma,
and the Constitution and state laws of the Constitution of Oklahoma,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
and I will faithfully discharge,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
the duties of my office or employment
the duties of my office or employment
during such time as I am a member
during such time as I am a member
of the Broken Arrow Board of Education.
of the Broken Arrow Board of Education.
Just one more. Raise your right hand. I state your name,
I, John Cockrell,
hereby declare under oath
I hereby declare under oath
that I will faithfully perform the duties
I will faithfully perform the duties
of board member of Broken Arrow Public Schools
of board member of Broken Arrow Public Schools
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
all of the duties pertaining to said office
all the duties pertaining to said office,
and obey the Constitution and laws
obey the Constitution and laws
of the United States and Oklahoma.
of the United States and of Oklahoma.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mr. Cockrell.
Thank you.
Item number 6 will be discussion on the reorg of the school board.
I move Mr. Steve Allen as president.
Second.
Got it? Are we going to do them one at a time? Okay. Got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell? Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Ms. Keller, we may not have voting buttons on all these.
Okay, she can make that.
Just make a manual, you'll
Yes.
just make a manual
Yes, I
note
will.
on these.
Yeah.
Okay. Next will be the vice president.
I nominate Mr. Steve Majors as Vice President.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item will be the clerk.
Nominate Jerry Denton to be the clerk. Second.
Got a motion
I don't
and a
know.
second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item will be the deputy board clerk.
Nominate Cheryl Kelly as the deputy board clerk. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. And next item, board member. Or member.
I nominate Mr. John Cockrell as Board Member.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Thank you.
Don't you already nominated?
Next item, number 7, you all did receive the board member code of ethics, and I will not read to you. I would assume you all read them all. And any discussion or questions on this?
What I'd like to do is I'd like to just make the public aware that certainly over the last many years, we've had this code of conduct, and I wanted to assure each of you that the Board of Education has had these code of conduct for a few days so that we could review them ahead of the board meeting. So I just want to make sure that each of us knows that here before we take any action.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
I make a motion to accept.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, number 8, the board minutes from February 12th meeting. Discussion or questions?
Move approval?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell? Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, Ms. Bergwall.
Good evening, President Allen, Dr. Dunlop, members of the board. I bring for you tonight a donation from the Country Lane Intermediate PTA. Our assistant principal, Samantha Troutman, has been working with their PTA. Carrie Laughlin and Chris and Amanda Porter are in the back there for this donation. She's been working with them to look at improvements to their playground area in benches and concrete and 4 square areas, and they are ready for us to accept that donation so that they can complete that work by the end of this month with your approval.
Questions?
Move approval?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Want to thank the PTA for all their hard work and everything they do for our kids. It's greatly appreciated. And without you all, there's a lot of things that would not get done, fun things for our kids, from running trails to a lot of good things. So we want to thank you all, to the PTA. Okay, next item will be comments from the public. First up will be Ms. Jane York. Ms. York, you will have 5 minutes since you are speaking to an agenda item. And I believe the clock will be running, is that correct?
Yes. Whenever you're ready.
We don't
We'll
want to
take
have
5 minutes with it.
We don't want to have to cut you off, Ms. York. Come on.
Okay.
Ready?
Mr. President, members of the board, I'm here tonight to speak in favor of agenda item number 16 on behalf of Broken Arrow PTA. The Oklahoma PTA board voted recently to approve a position statement that I'm going to share tonight on behalf of the Broken Arrow PTA. Whereas the Oklahoma State Legislature has continually failed to pass revenues which would provide Oklahoma teachers with pay raises and adequately funded education. Whereas low pay is the #1 reason Oklahoma teachers quit the profession. Whereas Oklahoma schools had 536 teaching vacancies, 480 teaching positions were eliminated, and 1,917 emergency teaching certificates were approved in 2017-18. Oklahoma PTA supports teacher-led initiatives to promote awareness of critical educational funding issues, including teacher salary increases and public school funding directed toward the Oklahoma State Legislature. That was adopted yesterday. So we wanted to present that to you tonight and let you know that on behalf of PTA, we are supporting the teacher-led initiatives that are coming through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Mr. Easton Moore, a student at Broken Arrow.
Good evening. My name is Easton Moore, and first of all, I'm just excited to be here tonight. I'm excited for the change that's coming in our state and to speak on behalf of the students at Broken Arrow High School. I'm the son of State Farm employee Jason Moore and English teacher Jeannie Moore. I'm the vice president of our student council at the high school. I am the leader of our FCA. I've started my own Bible study club. I'm a part of our jungle squad. I was recently named a National Merit Finalist. I say this. And I say this not to boast about the things that I've accomplished, but rather to provide and show that I have a little bit of perspective on the pulse of the students at the high school. And so I have an opportunity in this summer to go for 2 weeks to Africa. And so I've been studying their culture a little. And they tell this story of the two largest elephants in the jungle fighting, and they keep fighting, and neither one of them gets hurt, but only the grass gets trampled underneath them. And education is the largest industry in the state of Oklahoma, and our young people are the largest economic resource in our state. And my wonderful parents, taught me that where you put your time and where you put your money shows what's important to you. And right now, the students at the high school and the students all across the district feel as if they are irrelevant, not because of the people in this room or the work that the school board puts in, but the money that is being allocated, actually the lack of money that's being allocated to education statewide. Being named a National Merit Finalist comes with tons of opportunities, but because of this, I'm starting to not want to provide and invest my opportunity in the state of Oklahoma because I feel devalued as the next generation. So we have the opportunity to change the course of history. We can make history by enabling our teachers to make a stand. Are we truly a people group or a generation that wants to be marked by the lowest teacher salary or 45th in funding per student? Is this the legacy that we're excited about or that we're standing for? Or are we going to empower our teachers to enable our students to be a priority again? Now let me revisit that African quote because I think it relates to the American reality we're living right now. You see, we just chose to send an elephant and a donkey as the two animals up to the top of this mountain to fight. So they go up and they go up and they continue to fight and battle it out. And we all agree that we're the ones standing at the bottom of the mountain. And they can't see the bottom of the mountain. We see the top, we look to the Capitol, and our two picks continue fighting. But what they can't see as they're fighting is the bottom of the mountain, the students and the teachers. They continue to fight, just like the story of the African elephants, and demolish the grass along with the students who make them feel trampled and the teachers who are compressed and derooted from their work. It's time for these teachers to walk out, to step back from the mountain, so that the elephant and the donkey that are fighting so hard against each other on the mountain can see the damage that they have done to the grass that we stand on. See, you guys in this room deserve better. Your kids deserve better. Our teachers who invest not just in myself but in other students deserve better. My mom deserves better. And ultimately, the future generation of Oklahomans deserve better. So please do anything and everything in your power to approve the call for a resolution in support of public education to advocate for a proposal to restore funding in education. Thank you, guys.
Easton, we don't typically comment back or have conversations with speakers, but it's not against our board policy. Very well done, young man. Very well done.
It's hard to top that.
I'm ready to get into it, Easton. Next item, item number 11. Mr. Henema.
Good evening, President Allen, members of the board, Dr. Dunlop. I have some positive news for you. I'm here to encourage you to accept the donation from the Broken Arrow Public Schools Foundation in the amount of $27,550.16. That will be distributed to various teachers across the district in the form of teacher grants, as the foundation has done for the last 25 years. I've invited the grant committee chairman, Mr. Kamara Washington, to tell you a little bit more. Mr. Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Enema, President Allen, Dr. Dunlop, and members of the Board of Education. Thank you for this opportunity. I come before you representing all these wonderful people in the green shirts. If you don't mind, please stand. This is the Broken Arrow Public Schools Foundation. For over 25 years, a collective members of stakeholders, parents, retired teachers, business people have gathered together to work and raise funds on behalf of Broken Arrow teachers and students. And at this time, we just come to you asking you to accept this donation on our behalf as we continue to try to pour into the lives of the Broken Arrow teachers and students in this community. As the young man said, it's time to invest in them as much as they invest in our students. So I'll just ask you to accept this donation on their behalf.
Mr. Washington, as a former member of the foundation, and appreciate all the hard work that you do. As the lines get thinner and thinner for funding, it's every dollar helps, and I know our teachers probably appreciate that very much. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I would like to make a comment too. I want to recognize certainly, Mr. Washington, you talked about the number of years that this foundation has been in place, and all of those who have committed themselves to work towards the betterment of all of our students, and certainly provide the teachers the tools they need in the classroom. And we couldn't do it without them. And as I look around the room, there are many of you who have participated in the foundation for many, many years. And I can tell you right now, without committed individuals within our community, the students in Broken Arrow certainly would not be as in a situation where they have the support that they need. So thank you to each of you who have participated for so many years in the foundation. You are much appreciated. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Next
Thank
item,
you, guys.
Thank you.
Mr. Ptolomeo, father to be.
Yep. Good evening, President Allen, Dr. Dunlop, members of the board. I'm here to present the quarterly construction update. We have completed quite a few projects in the 2015 bond issue, all of phase one, and with the exception of the Freshman Academy, and we can finally close out the books on 2009 bond issue because the Performing Arts Center is now complete too. Like I said, the Freshman Academy. This is a rendering of what the Freshman Academy will look like, and here's a floor plan. We're adding a media center, some offices, and then 4 science classrooms, and then we're going on the inside and renovating those areas, and we'll have a net add of 11 classrooms when we get done with this space. This is what the building looks like, so we're making some good progress. Our first floating BA logo, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty geeked out about. And then we are actually getting ready to occupy this. We have our temporary certificate of occupancy, which means we can start moving boxes and furniture in and teachers' stuff in, and we will start having class in there on the Monday we return from spring break. In this picture, this is the media center looking into it on the left, and then looking out of it on the right, and then the science classrooms. And then, as always, can we build it? Do you guys have any questions?
Mr. Tolman, when do you expect that to be fully completed?
We'll complete the addition. We're actually moving into it now. We'll go on the inside, start renovating. We're actually going to start tearing down some stuff over spring break, create some tunnels like you would see in an airport, and start renovating basically by Friday of next week. And then we'll complete everything by August of 2018. So when kids come back next year, we'll be done out there.
The whole project will be complete?
I'm sorry?
The whole project will be complete?
Yes, sir. Any more questions?
Great job.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Tolomeo, just to clarify, on bond dollars, can those be used for salaries?
Bond dollars cannot. They have to be used specifically for what they're passed by, and they can't pay any employee of the school districts.
Thank you.
Next, item number 13, Mr. Blackburn.
Good evening.
Come here.
You're not going to leave me up here by myself. Jeff Martin and myself have been brought to the board basically to discuss with everyone some questions that have been swirling around in regards to our district, in regards to safety and the events that have taken place across our nation. And so we just wanted to share with everybody a little bit of the security measures that have been put in place for the district for some time, actually, but just to reassure individuals that we are looking at the safety of our kids in regards to daily practices, and God forbid any tragic event occurs. With that, some of the things to be noted is secure entries at all of our sites. We have security officers at the high school and the larger secondary sites based on, not because of necessarily an event that could occur, but primarily because we're dealing with 15 to 18 to 19-year-old students and the emotions that they bring in to a school and what can occur. So those officers are there primarily for that reason, but they also serve as secondary in the event that unwelcome individuals come to our school. We have district radios that are monitored by BAPD, which most people do not know that. They are encrypted radios. Therefore, people just can't pick up the channels and listen into our communication. We have student and staff drills that are done each semester in regards to perimeter and or intruder drills. We have a visitor management system to check for sex offenders. We have a district school emergency response team that was formed 3 years ago in response to these types of events. This team, along with Mr. Martin and myself, train these individuals that are district personnel across anywhere from transportation, child nutrition, to administrators at sites, how to address a concern and also make sure that we unify parents with their kids. We have district emergency plans, district maps, and those plans are shared with BAPD and BA Fire annually as we update and continue to grow as Bob continues to make changes to the district. We have threat assessment forms that we've reviewed and gone through with counselors to make sure that we're addressing the needs of kids, and then also getting them in front of counselors or service if they need it. And then we have a mass communication device in regards to notifying parents the best that we can in regards to events that are taking place in our district. Some of the questions that have been posed here lately is how do we address threats? And I'm going to have Mr. Martin step in here, and before I do that, I want to let you know and thank the board for the hiring of what used to be Officer Martin. With his 30 plus years at BAPD, he brings a value of knowledge and helps me out a great deal. So I want to tell you that I appreciate that. So with that,
every time that there's a threat that comes in, whether somebody posts something on social media, whether they actually are overheard discussing something, and that could be threatening in nature, they are all investigated. There is none of them that go by that is not looked into to ensure to see if there is any validity or if we just have somebody making a statement of some sort. And we take a look at those. We do this in coordination with the Broken Arrow Police Department. They get notified of every time. Now, in the recent weeks, there's been no direct threats directed to Broken Arrow Public Schools, but there have been some real poor choices on passing on different social media posts and everything else. We actually look into those. We interview the individual that posts them. I actually go out to the residences and request to be able to take a look where they spend their time and generally their bedroom, any access they have to social media, anything like that, that we can actually investigate to determine whether there is a credible threat or a not credible threat. This is also done in conjunction with the Broken Arrow Police Department. Based on their accessibility to weapons, accessibility to anything that could be of danger to any of the students or staff, we take a look to see whether they actually look at different sites or if they've got reading materials that would be concerning to a normal person that they could pose a danger. If we don't find any of those, and again, in conjunction with the police department, we run this by them, we determine whether that threat is actually credible or not. If you don't have anything there that would lead a normal person to believe that they are a threat, it no longer is credible. You have to have something to be able to go on. And again, then the school takes its consequences. And as we've seen by the district attorney with Tulsa County, if there is anything directed specifically against a school, they will prosecute. We have the same assurances with the city prosecutor for minor events that they will also prosecute in a municipal setting if it doesn't reach to the level that it would be a state charge. So we do take a look at these things seriously. They are all investigated. Believe me, we've been very busy over the past couple of weeks because as things go out there, people, especially when they're young, they may make some statements that they don't necessarily mean, but they then have to own what they've made. So those are the types of things that we've actually been looking into. And again, I can't emphasize it enough that every bit of it that we do in conjunction with the school resource officers, with the Broken Arrow Police Department, and if they're not on duty, with the officers on the Broken Arrow Police Department. Responses to the schools, if there is any type of thing, the police department has a very quick response time. They put the information out to their staff regularly, showing the amount of time that it takes from the time they get the phone call to the time that an officer's on site. They have a very fast response time. About 4 minutes, 30 seconds is what they have, and that's an average. So that they're quicker. When we have people on site that are working security at the older sites, the high schools, Freshman Academy, Options Academy, in those areas, they have off-duty officers that are working security for the school district. They're there on site. They have their equipment with them. They have all the training that they've received, so they have people there immediately to be able to answer any problems that there may be, whether they be big or whether they be small. What we find out in these situations, the best way to stop all of this is to get it before it ever starts. And we've been very fortunate in Broken Arrow that the students will talk to a parent. They will talk to a teacher. They will talk to the security staff. They will talk to somebody and let them know that they've seen this out there. And they point that out, which gets us ahead of the game. It gives us the chance to talk to somebody before things get out of hand and things go down the wrong path. And that's something that we always try to tell all the parents. Be open, listen to your kids. Kids, always you can talk to somebody. If you feel threatened in any way, if you feel angst about anything, talking to somebody gives them the opportunity to take some action. Because if we don't know about it, there's nothing we can do about it. So telling them is a very important thing.
I appreciate Jeff bringing that up. Most of the situations we've dealt with, which we have dealt with several, unfortunately we've had students that think that getting attention through social media or the likes that they receive is the type of attention they want. Unfortunately, in some of these situations, it's brought them attention that has brought consequences as well. But I do have to commend our community and our patrons, because the issues that we have dealt with this year, majority of them were reported in advance, and it wasn't something that we stumbled across. And I also have to commend the police department, because there were at least 2 situations that they brought to our attention in the evening while school was not even in session. And we were able to get a jump on those quickly, and as far as addressing those concerns. The last thing I wanted to bring up in regards to bullying, because this is something that also happens to swirl around these types of situations. Much like any type of a threat that could be perceived, if we get notification of a bullying scenario, our administrators are required, but more importantly, they do it out of their heart, to go out and investigate what's taking place. There is a little bit of a discrepancy in what truly bullying means in regards to a true victim in scenarios. Oftentimes we find that we have mutual combatants in regards to communication between each other, primarily through social media, where they're exchanging words, etc. But our goal is to investigate any type of situation, especially if it's called bullying. And we have an anonymous reporting site that is on our district website and as well posted throughout the school sites. And it is used. And again, I have to commend our community, because when that was first pushed out several years ago, I was concerned with how many people would make false reports. And thankfully that has been very minimal. And it's allowed our administrators to get a jump on scenarios at their sites to start talking to kids. In all of these situations, and we preach this in our administrative meetings, but for those of you that are not there, culture and environment is everything. We can put armed guards in front of schools, we can create a prison type look, but to be honest with you, it's the relationships that the kids have with administrators and faculty that make the biggest difference. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Blackburn, I do, and I first want to thank you for all your hard work, and Mr. Martin, you as well. I know it takes a concerted effort among community staff, and certainly you yourself and Mr. Martin. Appreciate it very much. The one question I have is, how do we distinguish between our high school students who attend the high school or actually enrolled in the high school and students who come from off campus and we don't recognize that they're a student or not? They just blend in. I think that is something that, again, I'm not saying that we're going to solve this problem right now. It might be something we want to talk about, because when you look at the Florida incident, this was a student that was suspended, was not supposed to be on campus. So we have situations where we may have students who are not in school, who might want to visit somebody on campus. And when they enter the campus, we might not know. So we might want to talk about how we identify students who are actually enrolled. And again, that's not a topic that we can solve all in one setting here this evening, but I'd like your insights if you have some.
Sure. Several years ago when we were at the high school and I was the principal out there, we used to make students wear IDs. Unfortunately, that gave a false sense of security if somebody had a lanyard over their neck and they were wearing an ID that they had to be a student. So the best thing to do, again, is getting to know the students that attend the school. Administrators, believe it or not, with 3,500 kids out there, they start to see patterns, they start to recognize kids, and they start to ask questions. We need teachers, faculty, administrators going up to kids, asking questions, talking to them to find out if there are any issues. I will say that at 3,500 kids, I mean, it's actually larger than the college that I attended. And with that, it has its own unique situations and or concerns. But that's primarily why we have officers out there as well. But it's training staff to make sure that they feel comfortable asking questions. And IDs may be something that we revisit again, but I can tell you, at least back then, it did become a situation where people just assumed, and we found students that were wearing somebody else's ID.
Well, I certainly don't think that that necessarily is the answer to it. Having ongoing conversations is really a good thing to do. And I do think our staff members certainly are cognizant of the fact that we deal in a different world today. But we can never forget that, and we always have to be vigilant and always have to know what's out there. And the thing that I think that we sometimes might be neglectful at because we're so busy is not having those conversations. So I think that is very important, and I do appreciate everything that you guys are doing.
Yes, ma'am. Anything else?
Anything else? Thank you all.
Mr. Blackburn, Mr. Martin, I just want to say thank you. I mean, we know how intense it is to have that burden of making sure you're keeping our students safe all the time. Amazing job, and we so appreciate BAEA for being partners with us. That's the beauty of Broken Arrow, is that we are a very tight-knit community, and we know we can count on our especially our directors, but our police department to always be there when we need them. Appreciate you.
Dr. Dunlop, did you mean BAPD?
Did I say BAE? I meant BAPD.
I mean, we like the
my
BAE
acronyms,
too.
we like them too, but my acronyms
just,
are getting mixed up. I meant BAPD. You know what I meant.
just want to bring it. All right. All right. Next up, Dr. Dunlop, item number 14.
I can say this one right. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have you do it because well, good evening, President Allen, members of the board. I bring to you tonight an information item first. It comes prior to the next two items. But what we're going to discuss this evening is an information following a series of meetings put together by state leadership of OASA, which is an administrators organization, OSSBA, which is our state board meeting, OEA, which is our teachers union statewide, very similar to BAEA that I just talked about a second ago. And then COSA, again, administrators organization, and now PTA, of course, has joined the mix of this. I feel like I'm in Back to the Future, to be honest. In 1990, I was a student teacher, and I remember I was in the middle of my student teaching. I had just accepted my first job. And 2 weeks later, basically, I was walking on the Capitol and I was on strike. So I know that our teachers don't want to do this because I was in the same boat. I remember the angst I felt and how I felt like I was almost, betraying what I'd fought so hard to do. But I also understood that this isn't just about teachers and this isn't just about pay. This is about our kids. If you think about, 28 years ago is when this happened, and now we're right back in the same boat again. Let's go ahead and start with the first slide. So, our state. I think many of you have probably seen this slide before. It comes from Bartlesville Public Schools. Chuck McCauley, the superintendent there, did an amazing job presenting exactly where we are as a state. Our state's shortchanging our students. We heard from Easton, and by the way, Easton, I didn't want to follow you. We heard from Easton. He's a senior. So put this in perspective. We've been having cuts in education for so many years that Easton has only enjoyed 3 years of his entire educational career. He's a senior where he didn't have budget cuts. My daughter, she's in 8th grade. Of course, I want everything for her. She has never known a year that she has not had a cut in her education. This is wrong. And the teachers, yes, they're standing up and fighting, but they're not just fighting for themselves, they're fighting for all the teachers that we've lost. This is ridiculous, and it's gone way too far. 28%, that is how much of a percentage we've been cut. And honestly, if you look at this, these are other states. It's ridiculous that we are the ones that have been cut more than any other state in the entire union. That's an embarrassment to our state. So let's bring this local. Go ahead. A lot of times, I should say a lot of times because it's happened so much in the recent years, but at least if we know we're going to be cut in the following year, we can somewhat prepare for that. So we plan our staffing around it. We start, cutting positions. But the cut that is most unkind is the one that is our midterm cut. In the last 18 months, we have been cut. Last year, it was $2.1 million, and this was midterm. So when I say midterm, that's when we get back after winter break. We didn't plan for these cuts. We already had a budget set. We'd already hired folks. And then this year, another $400,000. So $2.5 million in just the last 18 months. We can't prepare for that. What business can prepare for that? Next slide. Okay, so our per pupil funding. If you look at our per pupil funding on the slide, and I know those are very, very tiny numbers, but in a nutshell, we have been cut since 2009, $244 for each regular education student. This doesn't include the cuts in or the costs that we have in materials, books, utilities, fuel. You know, if you think about the cut, at the very bottom line here in 2018, if we were funded at the same level we should have been back in 2008, we'd have an additional $7 million in Broken Arrow alone. $7 million. That would hire 142 teachers. That's what we're talking about. That's the significance. So let's talk about 2008 or 2009 to now. How much is the cost for materials? How much is the cost for textbooks? How much is the cost for fuel to transport our students gone up? And none of this is tied into this. Go ahead. Okay. So let's bring it forward to recently. Why are we so angry now? Why is this all coming to a head? Well, it really, to sum it up, it's about false promises. We have heard time and time again that in this session, in this special session, no, actually in the next special session, we're going to have legislation that funds education, but that has not happened. So for example, the A+ package, that was the first one that failed in special session. House Bill 1035 failed in November 2017. House Bill 1054 failed in November 2017. These combined bills passed in the Senate at 88%, and in the House, they passed at 72%, but still did not pass because of the supermajority. So let's sink that in. How do you get that many people in a room to agree on anything at 72%? We were able to do that, but it still did not pass.
Dr. Dunlop, question real quick.
Yes.
Do you think that's by design?
It could be. So that you know a little bit of the history, after House Bill 1017, very shortly after, we passed 1017, the teachers got a raise, we were able to reduce class sizes, there were a lot of things in the package. Very shortly after that, House Bill 640, or maybe Senate Bill 640 was passed. And what that does is that prevents us from being able to pass any bills that are fund increasing or additional revenue packages that don't pass by a supermajority, which is 75%. That's just impossible. We can vote bond issues in Broken Arrow at a more narrow margin, but yet we're being held to this very, very high level for any funding in education. So President Allen brings up a really good point. Is it by design? I don't know. It sure looks suspicious. So the next one, then we got to Step Up Oklahoma. This was just the most recent one. And boy, were we excited about this one, because we finally had our state chamber, we had business owners, we had corporations, we even had the oil companies backing us on this, and it still failed. This failed in February 2018, and I think this was kind of the final straw. So let's talk real quickly about what was in that. $791 million in new revenue, $406 million to end recurring budget holes, $285 million for a $5,000 teacher raise, $100 million for our current state budget hole. This failed in the House, 63 yes to 35 no, so 64%. Based on the what we require as a local bond issue, that would have passed, if that gives you an idea. So our leadership has promised over and over and over to fix common education funding with a teacher raise, and yet we're still in the same position with no teacher raise and no increase to funding. So one of the problems that have placed us in the position we're in now is our low tax burden. If you look at comparisons, and this chart I think is pretty clear, that our U.S. average of a tax burden is 8.6%. Currently at Oklahoma, we are 47th, and it's 6.6%. So we're about 9% lower than the average. Next one. We hear oftentimes that district consolidation could solve this. If we would just consolidate our districts, it would solve all the problems. Well, if you look at this, it's actually, we have been consolidating districts for quite some time. You know, in Broken Arrow, it's not an issue. If we get any bigger, I don't know what we're going to do. But some of these small towns, I get it. I mean, this is their identity, and it's a slow and painful process. There has been many bills brought up about consolidating some of the dependent districts, and honestly, most of them are starting to select to do that themselves because of budget issues. But if you look in let's say 1950 in Oklahoma, we had 2,100 districts. Even as near as 1990, we had 604, and we're now down to 521. So we are reducing. Really, one of the best solutions is, it's not going to save a lot of money, but it's going to solve problems for districts, is consolidating some services as far as professional development. And that is my opinion. Because if you're in a small district, sometimes it's hard to bring really quality professional development to teachers. And if we consolidated some of that and shared our resources, I think we could serve our teachers very, very well. This slide really speaks to what Easton was saying, in that it's not fair to our kids. Our elective classes in Oklahoma are disappearing. We have 525 fewer world language classes in the state. We have 500 fewer family and consumer science classes. For people who are really old like me, that's, you know, the home ec and business classes. We have 1,115 fewer art and music classes. I am so proud to be from Broken Arrow, because this is not the state in Broken Arrow. We have fought and fought and fought to make sure that these cuts, we keep them as far away from the classroom as possible. Our arts and music classes are doing great. Our family and consumer science classes are doing great, and our world languages classes are doing great. The bottom part of this slide is very concerning, because it shows in a scatter plot that the number of AP and honors level courses are starting to decrease across districts in the state. Again, not a problem in Broken Arrow, but if you're in one of the smaller communities, you as a student in Oklahoma are being cheated, and you're being cheated because of the budget cuts. So our biggest challenge probably is the teacher shortage. I'm so proud of all of our teachers who are here tonight, because you're representing what we know is needed in this state. But this is a reality in our state. 250 former Oklahoma teachers who left their profession were surveyed, and the average pay increase when they left the state of Oklahoma was $19,000. That's why we're here today. It's not that teachers have forgotten why they went into education. Well, you went into it because you love kids. Yes, we love kids, but we also have to pay the water bill. And that's the reality. So it's no question that Oklahoma is at the bottom of the list in teacher pay. Next slide. So let's bring it close to Broken Arrow, the teacher shortage. You've heard Superintendent Hoffmeister speak often about the teacher shortage in Oklahoma, and that this year we have a whopping 1,900 teachers in the state who have been emergency certified. This compared in 2011-12 at the state level, we only had 32. So let's put that local. 32 in the state in 2011. This year in Broken Arrow, we had 29. In 2011-12, we had 0. Last year, we had 3. The year before, we had 3. If this doesn't speak to the teacher shortage, I don't know what does.
Excuse me, Dr. Dunlop.
Yes,
Just
sir.
for the general public, when you say emergency certification, can you explain that, please?
Sure. So what emergency certification means is it's someone who's gone through college, so they may have a degree in a certain subject area, but they have not taken education courses, so they don't have a teaching degree. So they get a certificate, and then they have to continue to take classes. But it's not very many hours. It's like, is it 6 hours? I think it's 6 hours of education courses that they take. and I'm not saying emergency certified teachers aren't successful. I'm not saying that at all. But it's a disservice to them as well, because they don't get the training and information that would be so much more helpful in the classroom for our students to find success.
Is the demand for this because of the shortage of not having maybe having a classroom, but yet not having an assigned teacher?
Yes. So for example, in Oklahoma, or in Broken Arrow, we're growing at 2.2% a year. So we constantly need to hire more and more teachers in our classrooms. But if the teacher pool is shrinking, yet our population and students are rising, sometimes we don't have a teacher to go in that classroom. So we kind of have to reach out a little further, and that's how we end up with emergency certified teachers, or sometimes we end up with positions that are not filled at all. We currently have 11 positions that are not filled in Broken Arrow.
Thank you.
I'll compare that to my first year of teaching. I remember I interviewed for an English position, and there were about 150 applicants for that job. So, okay, so this brings us to why we're here today. The proposed teacher walkout on April 2nd, I want to clarify, this is a grassroots movement. This is not something that the superintendents in the state got together and decided to do. This is teachers. The teachers are finally fed up, and they have decided, you know what, our kids deserve more, and we deserve more. And it's time that we hold our lawmakers accountable for the same thing that we are held accountable for every single day, and that's making sure we do our job. So this is a call to action for our legislators to do their jobs. So the Oklahoma OEA is asking the following from lawmakers to prevent the walkouts and school closings that are scheduled to start April 2nd. First, they want funding for a $10,000 teacher raise. That may seem like a lot. It's not. If you consider our regional average, that would put us right in the middle, upper middle of our regional average. So no, it's not. Fund $5,000 in support pay raise. You know, if you think about teachers not making much money, you should see our support scale. It's the same thing. It's, you know, the budget is the budget. You have your general fund to be able to pay your employees, and you can't make any more money appear to pay them, so somehow you have to make it work. We lose more support employees than any other area in the district.
Dr. Dunlap, real quick, 2 questions. If locally we were going to fund in our district a $10,000 raise out of our general fund to our teachers, how many teachers would we have to cut in order for that to be
Oh goodness, that's
across?
a great question.
Because a lot of times I hear things asked to me, well, why don't you do that at the district level? Well, just tell us exactly, maybe, and estimate if you need to.
Well,
maybe what you would have to do to cut down to get to a fair enough number of teachers.
You're going to make me do math. That's
Well, we have Natalie here, so she can help. She don't need a calculator.
Well, our first option would be obviously looking at our fund balance as a possible source of one-time revenue, but that is entering into a very dangerous scenario, using that one-time money for reoccurring personnel and benefit costs.
Right, when you say our fund balance, that's like our savings account. So once it's gone, it'd be good this year, but no good next year. We would no longer have that money.
That's correct. That's our savings account, and I think I've reported to the board before on kind of our cash flow, how that operates and works for a school district, because we don't really start to receive serious revenue into our general and building fund until January, when we receive those ad valorem monies. And so we're really working off our savings account, if you will, to operate, to start the school year in August and September, to fund our first big payrolls for the year. So operating off those savings account is how we cover recurring operating expenses, utilities, supplies, everything else that's required behind the scenes to make a school district run and operate.
Ms. Enoff, wouldn't you say that having a general fund is more important now than ever before? I mean, a fund balance is more important now than ever before as a result of our inability for state to set a budget and stay with the budget?
Absolutely. Our fund balance is really
how we handle midterm adjustments. While we try and be proactive as we can, as a district, we've chosen to spend very, very conservatively. However, our fund balance is what keeps us from having to make reactionary decisions in the face of a $400,000 budget shortfall.
And what would happen if we depleted our fund balance? What would happen to the district?
Well, we would be entering into a situation of having to issue and ask the board to authorize non-payable warrants, where we're basically going.
IOUs.
I'm sorry?
IOUs.
Yes,
Yeah.
before the board to say, we don't have, to our vendors that we make payments to, we don't have the cash at the moment, but, in 3 to 6 months, our cash would start to come in and basically be kind of entering into a loan situation.
Are there districts in the state, though, that are forced to close as a result of that?
I don't know of any that are forced to close, but I do know of many districts entering into non-payable warrant situations.
What do we have, approximately 1,800 teachers? 1,100? So $11 million we'd have to find somewhere and cut to get to that number?
Mm-hmm. And so if you do the math on that last slide where we had a $7 million cut and we had, 140 teachers basically. So,
Yeah.
so that gives you an idea. It'd be upwards of 175 teachers
cut.
we'd have to cut.
In order to do that locally.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, so let's dip into the fund balance to pay that. Well, you get to pay it one time and you have to turn around and terminate all those people that you just gave a $10,000 hire to or raise to because you can't pay them the following year. So it doesn't make any sense. It's like paying your electric bill with your savings account. Okay, so the $5,000 support raise, restore the $200 million in funding over 3 years. This equates of all the other cuts, the 1017 fund, other funds that we've had cut in education. This is the reason we can't buy textbooks. This is the reason why we have to cut special programs in our schools because the funding is not there. Fund 5% in cost of living increase for our retirees. They haven't had one, and that's the other reality is as a retiree, the cost of living continues to go up and up and up. Find new recurring revenue for core services, and this kind of bleeds over into some of the other issues that have been very public recently. Fully staffed state agencies, and then the state employees have also reached out asking for a $7,500 pay raise. So let's talk about what the possible April 2nd date means to Broken Arrow. Honestly, it all depends on how long this lasts. We have 180 days in Broken Arrow teacher contract. So some of the solutions, depending on how many days we're out, we could, it's just like snow days. We could add minutes to the calendar. We could gain 5 days by attending school using our snow days that are built into this school year, which means we would end on May 25th. But it just depends on how long it lasts. It's really hard to look into a crystal ball and find out what's going to happen. The ideal situation is that our lawmakers will get to work and resolve this before it comes to this. That's what everyone wants. I think that we all would agree no one wants this to happen. But you also get to a point where you don't believe the promises anymore and you need it to happen. The last one, this is the calendar, just so we have a visual. And as you can see on those little bitty dots up there, the calendar does indicate that we would actually, our current last day of school is May 18th. So with 5 days used, our last day of school would be May 25th. And at that point, we may add days or minutes past May 25th to the calendar, depending on how long we're out. But we want to be prepared and know what comes next, because if you're like me, you're a planner, and you need to know what comes next. As a final comment, as Easton said, we have to decide what's important to us. And it's real easy to stand up in public and say, I support public education. But oftentimes, it's not what you say, it's your actions that matter most. So what our teachers and our educational organizations are asking is show us action and not words. Thank you.
Ms. Ian, if I got a quick question, and Dr. Dunlap, you may be able to help here. I was speaking with another superintendent in another town, and I asked him, I've been on the board 9 years now, and I've seen cut after cut after cut, and we've adopted some of other people's resolutions or supported, but I asked him, how long or how many more years can we cut education before the school closes? And he gave me a number of anywhere from 3 to 5 years of continued cuts to where it's going to cut to the heart of what we do in our schools. Is that a fair assessment, you think, to make? And his district may be different than ours, but I mean, at what point of continued cuts do we get to where we're really cutting into the heart of our services?
I mean, I think we're very dangerous to that line right now of cutting essential services. The state has continued to use one-time rainy day revenue as a solution or Band-Aid, if you will, and right now we're really in a case of needing as a state to come up with new recurring revenue to solve this problem from continuing to perpetuate it. Dr. Dunlop mentioned that her daughter hasn't seen a year where her education has not been cut. It's proven to be a pattern.
I also think the impact could possibly be stronger in districts where you're growing, because if you think about the cut is per pupil, so it's almost like your growth works against you. That the more you grow, and especially if you have students with any exceptions at all, that gap just continues to grow and grow and grow.
I think getting to the point of what Mr. Allen was making, I mean, we're at that critical point right now where if something does not happen, we're not talking about teacher shortages necessarily, although those are very evident, but we're talking about the impact that the further cuts are doing to the education of students, the opportunities that we so rightfully need to provide to them to be successful. You know, we talk about economic development all the time. Well, economic development is education. If you don't have education, you don't develop your economy, you don't develop your state. We have a requirement under state law that says we must provide a free and appropriate public education for every child. That is the one thing that is required in our Constitution, and we're failing to do that today. Our legislature, yes, they've continued to say that they're going to promise they're going to fix the problem. But I can tell you this, the work that our staff members do is second to none. They continue to push each and every day. And if you kind of walk around and you talk to people, which I know many of you do, morale is key. And we need to have well individuals going into our classroom, working in the support divisions, and doing what needs to be done every day to ensure that those kids come to a safe school, they have wonderful teachers, they have great support personnel, and the administration is working to ensure that they have the support they need to do the job. I can tell you this, our Board of Education, and I don't speak for each of them, but I'm going to say this from me to each of you. You're valuable to us, and from my standpoint, I am very much in favor of taking this position because it's going to impact significantly the Broken Arrow community. So that said, I'm going to end.
What do they call that, yield? I'll yield my time. Well, I tell you, Ms. Kelly, been on here 9 years, and it's not like this is a surprise, like this budget cut just snuck up on us one day, like came around the corner, then, oh, we got to cut some money. I read an article about one of our former legislators, the late Mr. Brumbaugh, made a comment, and this was 3 years ago, in an article that they saw this coming 2 years ago, the budget shortfall was coming. So that would have been a total of 5 years prior that our people in Oklahoma City saw this coming, but yet cut tax after tax after corporate tax after corporate tax and still did nothing to provide additional revenues for our state. I think it's time to stop playing politics and understand that our schools aren't a business and aren't meant to make money for people. There's no money to be made in public education. But if you'll cut it where you are forced to go to a charter, virtual, or another school, there's a lot of money to be made. But there's no money in public education. So I think it's either intentionally done, or lack of capability to get the job done. And it's time to stop. I've been here 9 years, and it's like you hear the vote them out. Well, yeah, they're politicians. They'll tell you one thing, they go to Oklahoma City, and you don't get anything done from the funding standpoint. And it's sad. We're in a bad state. I fully support our teachers and their efforts, and I hope they all go down there and are loud and proud if this is approved by the board and our resolution, and I hope they make a lot of noise. And I hope that we will get a representative get a Republican representative that supports public education and get them to get out there and win the dadgum elections, if that's what it takes. Because we need representation for public education. We don't need lip service. We've been getting it for 9 years. I've been on the board, and it's really right now it's disgusting. It's disgusting, and to hear other districts talk that I have friends in districts like many of you, and it's critical. You got a friend over across town that they may lose their job because someone down in Oklahoma City can't do the right thing. It's sad, and I'm willing to pay more if it means providing the services we provide here in Broken Arrow. My son was lucky to have Miss Moore for English. I want more Miss Moores here in town, not less. So, and I fully support it, and I hope you all make a whole bunch of noise when you go down there if this is passed.
Mr. Allen and the board, I would also like to just kind of champion this as well too. I mean, I fully support the teachers in this measure. It's it's something that all of us heartfelt don't feel like, oh, this is something we need to do. But the deal is every single effort that has been made up to this point, we've exhausted every single effort. We've tried negotiation. We've tried conversations. Teachers have gone on this state. I mean, every single thing has been done to try and alleviate these issues. And, the deal is in Step Up Oklahoma, there are things that have been recommended that are very viable. They just don't want to take actions on them, or they're afraid to. And again, I think it's a political game that you've talked about. The politicians are not doing their job. And the deal is you talk about teachers being impacted on. I've had a lot of folks where I work, talk about, hey, guy, as a parent, what am I going to do? What are we going to do with our kids not going to school and things like that? But the support behind this is incredible. I mean, we have religious groups that are out here standing up saying, hey, you know what, we're going to help with this because we truly believe in this as well too. And the thing is all the parents that are going to be ticked off about this, mad about this, fine. They also need to go to the legislators. They also need to be loud and proud as well too, because this isn't just the teachers really trying to get extra money out of this. This is one step. We need to continue to press our legislators to have a successful Oklahoma. We've got to have recurring revenue. It has to be something that continues to fund. And the thing is as Oklahomans, it's not very easy to be proud right now because we sure as a heck aren't wanting to put education first and foremost. But as Ms. Kelly said, it is required in our Constitution, and our legislators are not doing their job. Again, not doing their job. And the deal is how do we fix that? We vote their butts out of office, get somebody else in there to do the job if that's what it takes. It's a hard thing to do. The deal is every one of us know people out there, so let's all be talking to everyone and explaining it's not just teachers that are mad right now, but this is going to affect parents, families, people going to work because our legislators are not doing their job.
Well, and I hope that the message to our parents, it's not that pain or your child isn't cared about. This is for your child. This is the fight for your child that I believe these teachers are taking. It's for your child's future and your child's education. It's not that any teacher in our district, I would be hard-pressed to find one that wants to cause harm to any child in our district. This is about the fight for them. And everyone has a voice. I would encourage our parents, get educated on the issues. Know the funding formulas. Know what we're talking about. Don't listen to the smoke and mirrors about more money being pumped into the budget. Well, yeah, but you left out the part that there were 50,000 more students. So yeah, the pot got bigger. And so just know the issues and get out and ask questions and question your legislators, because this is about your children. This isn't just about teachers. 1,900 emergency certified teachers. 1,900. The quality of education, that's and the future of your children. That's what it's about. All right. So let me calm down here for a second.
Got a little warm. I think temperature got a little hotter in here a little bit. Somebody needs to turn the air on.
Might need some medicine. All right, next item, number 15. I'm going to read this resolution, and then we can have any discussion, questions, or anything like that. Item 15 is discussion, motion, vote on motion to approve or disapprove the call for a resolution in support of public education to work with classroom teachers and leadership of Broken Arrow Education Association to advocate for a proposal to restore funding to education and increase teacher salaries. Resolution, whereas the Broken Arrow Public Schools Board of Education recognizes the chronic underfunding of public school education and continued cuts for more than a decade. And whereas the Broken Arrow Public Schools Board of Education has supported and worked for solution after solution to fund teacher pay raises and common education, only to see the legislators unsuccessfully find common ground and pass legislation comprehensively addressing this emergency. And whereas the Broken Arrow Public Schools Board of Education supports the public school teachers and the work that they do educating the children of our school district. And whereas school districts have increasingly turned to the use of long-term substitutes, teachers, and emergency certified teachers to educate students. And whereas the low pay provided by the state of Oklahoma for public school teachers has led to students not being able to receive an education from highly qualified and certified teachers. Whereas the Broken Arrow Public Schools Board of Education, on behalf of our teachers, students, and families, cannot allow this crisis to continue through another legislative session. We support all measures taken by our classroom teachers to demand the necessary funding for a meaningful teacher raise and adequate education funding. And whereas Broken Arrow Public Schools Board of Education is in full support of the legislation and advocacy plan endorsed by our teachers and stand ready to take any steps necessary to improve conditions for our teachers, including a district-wide suspension of classrooms. Be it therefore resolved that the Broken Arrow Public Schools Board of Education hereby implores Oklahoma legislators to find a dedicated source of revenue that can be utilized to fund a much-needed reoccurring salary increase that will be provided to public school teachers in Oklahoma. Any discussion or questions?
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, number 16, Dr. Dunlop.
Yes, this item, as a result of the resolution, is a item that will allow the state or the local Board of Education to suspend classes for up to 25 school days, starting April 2nd, to support teachers who are fighting for increase in school funding and a teacher pay raise. This provides that such days must be made up if required by law, with such closure to occur only if a teacher walkout is scheduled by teacher groups or organizations, and if the superintendent determines that such school closures are necessary for the safety of students and for the fiscal integrity of the district in order to avoid the necessity of hiring substitute teachers.
Questions or discussion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. All right. Next item will be the general consent agenda, which will be items 17 through 54. Discussion or questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, 55, operations. Mr. Tolomeo.
Good evening. I'm here to seek your approval to hire Key Construction to be our construction manager for the child nutrition renovations. This will be paid for with child nutrition funds.
Mr. Tolomeo, this is the old maintenance shop, is that correct?
That is correct.
And they'll have their own standalone facility now?
That we'll actually retrofit the existing maintenance shop. There's a little office suite. We are going to basically remodel that.
So it'll
to
just be
meet
standalone
maintenance.
child nutrition only, is that right?
Part of it, and then the other
Okay.
half will still be used for, that's where we store our winter equipment to de-ice all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item, 56, Mr. Perry. Thank you, Mr. Tolomeo.
Good evening. Bringing forth the 2018-2019 calendar that's been put together by our Instructional Time Task Force. Two changes this year. Pretty much models our current calendar, but two things that we did feel like needed to be addressed. One is on January 21st is Martin Luther King Day next school year, and that is a date that our school has been out traditionally, but our 12-month employees have reported to work. We feel like that's a holiday that needs to be honored by the district offices being closed. And to make up for that day, we're asking all 12-month employees trading off that day for to attend December 20th, which would be the first day of winter break for the students. And of course, they would have the option of taking a vacation day during that time for the 12-month. And then the second date, or the second item that's a change is, if you'll look on January 22nd, the day after Martin Luther King Day, we would like to do a virtual day. Again, the Instructional Time Task Force is made up of parents, teachers, and administrators. And a lot of school districts across the state are using virtual days to make up snow days. We feel like we need a trial run this next school year, and it would be a K through 12 option for us to look at. Sequoia Middle School, the 8th graders there do have Chromebooks, and obviously all of our 9th through 12th have Chromebooks. Those assignments would be pushed out through Canvas, and all of our elementary and the remaining middle school students would receive packets prior to the January 22nd date, and those packets would comprise a project-based assignment for them to complete that day. We have checked with the State Department of Education, and that again is an approved school day as long as we do take attendance and take measures in place. And I think that'll give us a chance to look at all the shortcomings and things we need to work out and use that as a, again, a trial run for the 1920 school year as a makeup day for snow days. I will say again, the committee wanted to model this year's calendar pretty closely. We are looking at some major changes for the 1920 school year in regard to start times, our PLC times, which are currently late start Wednesdays. We have 5 subcommittees broken up with elementary, secondary, fine arts, athletics, and transportation, studying how we could better construct our calendar and make some changes that fall in line with educational research. And we will be presenting updates to the board several times over this coming school year to make preparations for the, again, 1920 school year for you to look at that calendar.
Mr. Perry, I want to thank you and certainly your leadership with the committee. I know that the committee does a lot of hard work engaging in having innovative practices within our school community and being responsive to our parents and to our students. And I do think that the calendar continually shows and reflects that as we have made changes since I've been on the board. And I'm not a parent in the community, obviously, but I was a former teacher, and I do know how important calendars are to the scheduling of parents, to the scheduling of staff members. It's very respectful, the way that it's being done, the way it continues to be done, and I know we'll continue to improve it to meet the needs of students and certainly service our families better. So thank you.
I appreciate that. It's constantly evolving.
Yes.
All right, any more discussion? Entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item.
Thank you.
Mr. Perry. Mr. Stout.
Thank you, President Allen, Dr. Dunlop, members of the board. Item number 57 is seeking your approval for a new agreement for software. The software is Stoneware Unified Workspace. It's roughly $32,000 with bond funds. This product provides single sign-on for all students and all administrators across the district. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
This is the app that we talked about, correct?
Yes, it is.
And I just want to say, you know, I would have loved this as a staff member. Having a one-stop shop and being able to identify locations for information more readily. So thank you certainly to you and anyone else who works in providing these opportunities to make us more efficient.
Make a motion. Oh, well, I apologize.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stout. Ms. Enoff. Should have tied this in to when we were asking you questions earlier.
President Allen, Dr. Dunlop, members of the board. I've already kind of hit this from a global perspective this evening, but looking at our financial position as of the end of February, you can see the effect of our state aid cuts so far this year. Dr. Dunlop gave the number of $400,711, the cut we received from our midterm allocation. And I want really to highlight to the board that we're making this okay for our district because of our increase in our district valuation and our ad valorem collection. We're up almost $2 million in that category, and that's because our district continues to grow and to flourish and to be successful in its economic endeavors, and this is what is really helping and saving the district in not having to make really dramatic and drastic budget cuts. We had a ratings call the other day with our bond rating agency that I'll discuss in a few moments. And our agency was just so impressed at how Broken Arrow has continued to thrive and to grow and has so much potential for bringing in new industries, and especially in the manufacturing sector. And this revenue category is so important to our district and to our long-term financial health and picture. So I really want to highlight that tonight.
Ms. Enoff, where does that put us from local funding versus state funding percentage-wise?
You know, a few years ago we were about 60% state-driven and 40% local other sources, and that number has continued to kind of turn itself on its head, if you will, and kind of our local ad valorem dollars have started to eclipse where we are with our state funding.
So meaning they're spending our state dollars elsewhere and we're having to rely on local sources.
Correct. So that means more of a burden put on our local taxpayers and shifted less from the state.
Thank you.
Again, building fund, ad valorem, we're in this very same predicament. Our building fund is such a small revenue collection from our taxpayer dollars. And everything that is done in our building fund, we do pay some salaries and benefits from that fund, but everything operationally is done through our building fund. And so we have a very narrow source of revenue for a very wide coverage for our district in terms of expenses and needs and maintenance and operation utilities. Child nutrition, our child nutrition program is self-sufficient in terms of how we collect money from our students for the school lunch program and our federal and state sources. In turn, they pay for their own salaries and benefits, costs, supplies, and everything else that go along with running that program. Our general fund expenditures, obviously, roughly 80% of our general fund goes to salaries and benefits, and we made the concerted effort within the last 2 or 3 years to curtail those expenses where we can through reductions in attrition and other natural forms of progression in that area, and everything else is pretty much staying consistent with where we've been in the past. And again, in building fund, you see some of the spikes that we've had in our building fund, but again, we've added space in the district, we've added maintenance, we've added cleaning needs. Even in some of the non-instructional areas, we're getting ready to open up our Kirkland Activity Complex. That's going to be additional space that we'll have to clean, maintain, secure safely. So all of those costs, if you will, are what the district is up against in making sure we're running as efficiently as possible. Again, I touched on child nutrition, everything that they pay. Really, child nutrition is operating almost as an enterprise fund, if you will, as far as how they're taking in, receiving, and spending their funds.
Ms. Ena, the only fund that we can use to pay for staff salaries is the general fund. I just want to make sure that everybody's knowledgeable about that, because when you look at the building fund and you look, as Dr. Dunlop mentioned, you couldn't use bond funds, then you're limited in what you can do.
Correct. Building fund can pay for some very select salaries and benefits for some of our custodial staff. But again, it's kind of a delicate balance for what we want to put into our building fund, because that is such a narrow source of revenue. But general fund covers 95% of our salaries and benefits.
You can't, just to make clear though, you can't expend any for salaries except through the general fund for teachers.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
And also to clarify, so as our ad valorem goes up, you know, we increase dollars coming in. Why doesn't that increase the amount of money that we have in the district?
So the way the state funding formula works is it's supposed to be an equalization among all school districts. So what the state does is for districts who have seen growth in ad valorem, they put that into a very complex formula, which I won't go into all the particulars of that. And basically that's charged against the district. I've mentioned the term chargeables before, and that's a chargeable against us that's taken out of the overall funding formula.
So we actually lose money from the state by growing.
That's correct. And that, to your question earlier about why the proportion for state and local funding has kind of switched, that's one of the reasons.
So if you're having success and thriving, they make you pay for it by taking money away.
Yes.
Just wondering.
Alrighty, and so you see our 2017 ending fund balance that we reported in our official audit, and believe it or not, our district-wide spending is going to start curtailing very quickly. April 2nd is kind of the internal deadline we put for routine spending across the district, and we kind of really start to try and narrow down what our final expenses for the year will be, so the board can review our projected 2018 balance.
Any questions? Okay. information. Okay, next item.
Okay, my next item is to ask the board to cancel the special board meeting set on March 29th. That date conflicted with the Good Friday holiday and is less than ideal for a bond sale with the way the markets operate.
Okay, I move to cancel the special meeting, which was scheduled on March the 29th, 2018, for a scheduled bond sale.
Second?
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, number 60, Ms. Enoff.
All right, my next item is to ask the board to reset that date for Wednesday, March 28th, for a bond sale of $23,325,000. And just as a reminder to the board, those bond dollars go to fund our annual allocations for technology, instruction, maintenance, transportation, as well as our recurring software costs for the district.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Ms. Hill, you'll send out a calendar invite, correct?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
And it's at 12 noon.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Enoff. Ms. Dolahan.
Good evening. I'm here to give the treasurer's report as effective the end of February. We'll start with the activity fund reports first. In the activity funds, total receipts at the end of February are $5,597,000. Total disbursements are $4,733,000, leaving a cash balance in the activity funds of $3,630,000. Any questions?
I do have a question related, because of the budget, the way that the budget is, obviously we have to stay very in line with our activity requests, et cetera. But are we seeing more of a need to use our activity resources for things that they've outlined, for instance, for training, for things that building principals may have a need for that they don't have Title IIA monies or some other monies for? I just didn't know if you were aware of such.
I haven't seen much. Of course, they're limited to what they can spend
right.
their money on and what they can bring revenue in. You approve the guidelines every year in July for the activity funds as far as the expenditures. But it's looking to be about on the same level as
About
other
the same
years.
level. Okay, I appreciate that.
You
Thank
bet.
you.
Okay.
In the treasurer's report at the end of February, the cash balances reports show a total of $76,506,000 in assets for the district. Included in this total are investments for the district in the amount of $63,256,000. Our collateral report shows a total of $46,374,000 of collateral that is pledged to the district. Our deposits that require collateral totaled $23,970,000, leaving an available balance of collateral of $22,404,000.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, Ms. Metavalis.
Good evening. My first item tonight are the encumbrance orders, and we have encumbrance orders totaling $655,377.93. I would recommend your approval of those encumbrance orders.
Questions?
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, 64, Ms. Metavalis.
Next item is our change order report, and those reports show a decrease of $179,741.28. Would recommend your approval of those change orders.
Questions or discussion?
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Thank you. Next item, Dr. Dunlop, item 65.
Yes, This item is to discuss and make a motion and vote on a special meeting dated June 14th and 15th. This will be our annual board retreat. This is what we do every summer. We spend a couple of days planning with the board on our goals and where we're steering our district in the following year.
Do those dates work, not work?
They work for me.
I'm clear on those days.
It's fine with me.
Mr. Majors, you're going to London or something, or?
That's as good as it gets.
All right. Entertain a motion.
Move approval?
Second?
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Who?
Mr. Majors?
Oh,
Yeah, here.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. I know it's been the longest meeting we've had. My apologies. Next, item 66, new business. We have none. Next, item 67, move to executive session.
Make a motion to move to executive session.
Second?
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.